Martin Luther King once said, human progress is neither automatic or inevitable. Every step towards justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle. The tireless exertions and the passionate concern of dedicated individuals. This quote reminds us of those veterans who served in the military and dedicated their lives. So today, here we are at the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Museum. It is the largest memorial in the United States that is built specifically to honor and remember people who devote their times and lives to military service.
Soldiers and Sailors was incorporated in 1905 by the Grand Army of the Republic, a service organization made up of Union Civil War veterans. It was erected as a tribute to Allegheny County Civil War veterans. Today, 100 years later, it continues to honor men and women who unselfishly serve our country.
Walking in the Soldier and Sailors Museum, these historical exhibitions remind us of the three historical figures, Rosa Parks, Albert Einstein, and Mahatma Gandhi. These three people all represent dramatic social changes that influenced our life. However, the success of these social changes is at the expense of some sacrifice. Sacrifice was always required as a stepping stone of dramatic social changes. The African American civil rights movement was no exception. Our eyes are easily attracted by the success of Rosa Parks, but we seldom pay attention to the amount of efforts that she put in and her predecessors who sacrificed their time, freedom, or even life to contribute to the success of the civil rights movement. One of the greatest examples is Kamaladevi Chattopadhyay. In the spring of 1941, Kamaladevi did the same thing as Rosa Parks. When asked to stand up, she refused to without hesitation. Kamaladevi's courage should be admired. Her persistence and willingness to give up make her even more selfless. Kamaladevi was born into a wealthy family in India. Instead of living her wealthy but unequal life, Kamaladevi devoted her life into fighting for equal rights for all kinds of people, not only colored but also Indian and women. Similarly, long before the incident on the bus, Rosa Parks had spent a lot of time doing work to advocate not only black people's rights but also women's rights. She worked with the NAACP to organize the boycott, which plays an important role in the civil rights movement.
I'm a colored woman, obviously, and it is unnecessary for you to disturb me, for I have no intention of moving from here. Famous quote from Kamaladevi when she refused to stand up on the bus. Rosa Parks and Kamaladevi are ordinary colored women living at the age when racial segregation was severe. They devoted their lives to fight for the rights for all humans. In a larger sense, they sacrificed their time and energy for the greater good of the whole world. Throughout history, it is not hard to find examples where individuals sacrifice their own benefit to achieve the greater good of the human race. We found this woman's word of tribute in the Soldier and Sailors Museum. General Claire Garrett, Major Teresa James, Chief Warrant Officer Emperor Fisher are all three famous female soldiers in the United States. During the wartime, they risked their lives in fighting against the Nazis. Their sacrifices not only demonstrate their willingness to give up their own benefits, but also represent the rise of women's power under the context of World War II.
The East Hall presents one of the most brutal wars of all time, World War II. Countries all over the world got involved, and millions of lives were either dying or living great miseries. In fear of the German atomic bomb project, one of the most influential scientists, Albert Einstein, not only once but twice signed letters from the Hungarian physicist Leo Szilard to address to our President Franklin Roosevelt to warn the importance of the construction of atomic bombs to fight against the Nazis, which later became known as the Manhattan Project. Two atomic bombs were dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki with a difference of merely 3 days. Hundreds of thousands of innocent Japanese died as a result of those bombings. Not long after, Japan surrendered, which automatically brought the world to peace again. Although some say it was a payback time for Japan, But innocent Japanese citizens died for what their government had done does not seem to be fair. Consider otherwise, if the bombs were not dropped, the war might have kept going on and more innocent people elsewhere died as an exchange. This dilemma is indeed unsolvable. Great social changes always come with a great sacrifice. Millions of people's lives were lost in World War II already. The war must come to an end. Given the situation, dropping the bombs seemed to be an effective option but not a moral one. Killing soldiers is called the battle, but killing innocent citizens remains murder. We might have saved more lives by killing, but how can murder ever be justified? The US sacrificed the Japanese in order to bring the peace back. It was certain that those innocent Japanese died unfairly, but it was a must at the time. The consequence and guilt is what we have to bear long after. Einstein once said, "I fear the day that technologies will surpass our human interaction." Should we hold Einstein responsible for this chain reaction? Although Einstein later on realized the danger and unnecessary use of the atomic bombs, but he was too late. The communication between the scientists and politicians were not successful, and his warnings were ignored. His role in the Japanese atomic bombs taught us one important lesson. He sought to bring new technologies for social change, but the new technologies would always develop so fast that the consequences are beyond our control.
Even though technology advanced and strengthened our nation, it is at the cost of people's lives through violent wars. Eisenhower is the 34th President of the United States, and his presidency was during the Cold War era. He strengthened our weapons technology by creating so many powerful rifles like these. However, many people have been killed. On the contrary, there's one figure who believed that everything can be solved through non-violence. And he demonstrated the notion that social change is accompanied by some sacrifice. This person is Mahatma Gandhi, who led India towards independence. His number one philosophy is the idea of satyagraha, which means true force.
A compelling example that illustrates good things is accompanied by some sacrifice is the Salt March. It was a non-violent protest that was very influential in history. Next to air and water, salt is perhaps the greatest necessity of life, and everyone needs it to survive. However, the British government was in entire control of salt production and distribution, which brought negative impacts to poor Indians. They could barely afford their everyday living, so how could they even have enough money to pay for salt? In order to stand for his people and capture attention, Gandhi decided to march 240 miles to the ocean. The government of India decided to use violence to deter the Salt March. The police beat non-violent marchers one by one, and they went down like 10 pins. Yet, these non-violent protesters didn't even complain nor fight back. They tolerated and sacrificed their lives just to fight for social change. Eventually, their suffering made the public against the British, and India started to produce salt domestically. Unfortunately, the social progress was accompanied by tragic sacrifice, the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi by Nathuram Godse. His death was regarded as an international catastrophe. Gandhi died for a cause he had spent his life defending: unity between Hindus and Muslims, the unity of the human race. His place in humanity can be measured in terms of history, and his name and stories will be remembered by everyone.
Here in Pittsburgh, the Soldiers and Sailors Museum serves not only as a landmark, but also as a place to remind modern-day citizens that the peace we have today is the result of sacrifice of millions of predecessors. One thing in common between these veterans and our three historical figures is that they all serve as small parts of dramatic social changes. Everyone can change and have an impact on the world. More importantly, from these figures, we need to remember that every social change comes with inevitable sacrifices.